Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding a fortune in plain sight, and today we're talking about a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. It's a 1972 D. Jefferson nickel, 5 cents, practically worthless by every measure you've ever been taught, and yet, one single specimen of this coin has been valued at an almost unbelievable $35 million. Let that sink in for a second. 35 million. For a coin that's still, technically, sitting in pocket change jars, junk drawers, and old coffee cans across America right now. Stick around, because before this video ends, we're going deep into not just this coin, but two more coins after it, each one stranger, rarer, and more jaw-dropping than the last. I won't tell you what they're worth yet. Trust me, you'll want to see it for yourself, but I promise you, the story gets bigger. Now, let's get into the 1972 D. The year 1972 wasn't exactly a headline-making year in American coinage. The Denver Mint was cranking out nickels by the millions, business as usual, workers moving through shift after shift, dies stamping out portrait after portrait of Thomas Jefferson with the same tired rhythm they'd used for decades. Nobody in that building had any reason to think anything unusual was happening. But somewhere in that sea of routine, something went wrong, or, depending on how you look at it, something went incredibly, spectacularly right. A die, the heavy steel tool that stamps the coin's design, was, according to the story collectors still tell today, subtly misaligned during a die setting procedure. Not enough for anyone on the floor to notice. Not enough to trigger a shutdown. But enough, over a tiny number of strikes, to produce coins with a double die obverse, a flaw where the design, the lettering, Jefferson's profile itself, appears to be struck twice, ever so slightly offset, creating a ghostly doubling effect that jumps out under magnification like a fingerprint of mint chaos. Double dies are already a big deal in the collecting world. But this particular error, on this particular date, combined with something else, a planchet mix-up, where a small handful of nickel blanks intended for another run may have slipped into the wrong bin, altering the coin's metal composition just enough to throw off its weight and tone. This is where things get almost mythical. Picture it. Somewhere in a bank bag, shipped out to a branch in Colorado or maybe further, these coins entered circulation completely unnoticed. Nobody was checking nickels in 1972. Why would they? A nickel is a nickel, you use it, you lose it, you don't think twice. That's exactly why coins like this survive undetected for decades. They get spent at gas stations. They get dropped into vending machines. They ride around in pockets and purses for years before anyone with a trained eye ever gets a real look at them. And that's precisely what collectors believe happened here. This coin passed through hands, drawers, piggy banks, maybe even a child's coin collection started on a whim, completely invisible, completely ordinary, until decades later, when someone, somewhere, finally looked twice. That's the moment that changes everything. Because once a coin like this lands in front of someone who actually knows what they're looking at, a local coin shop owner, maybe, running a loop over a roll of nickels out of pure habit, the doubling on the lettering catches the light just right, and suddenly their hands are shaking. That's not an exaggeration. Ask any dealer who's found a legitimate rarity in ordinary circulation, they'll tell you the moment feels almost unreal, like time slows down. From there, the coin doesn't just get pocketed and sold at face value. It gets sent off. Graded. Authenticated. Submitted to services like PCGS or NGC, the gold standard in coin certification, where experts under bright lights and heavy magnification confirm what the finder already suspected. This is not a normal nickel. This is a certifiable, documented error coin, and errors like this, when they're rare enough, don't just sell, they ignite bidding wars. And that's exactly what collectors believe happened with this 1972 D specimen. Word got out. Whispered about in collector forums, mentioned at coin shows in hushed, almost reverent tones, the nickel, the one with the doubling and the anomaly, surfaced at auction, and what happened next stunned even seasoned numismatists. Bidders who normally wouldn't blink at a five-figure lot suddenly found themselves in a full-blown war, driving the price up, and up, and up, past six figures, past seven, into territory that nickels simply do not go. When the dust settled, the final number attached to this coin reached that staggering $35 million valuation, a number that instantly made it one of the most talked about small denomination coins in modern collecting history. Think about the psychology of that room for a second: grown adults, serious collectors, competing over a coin whose face value is 5 cents. That's the power of rarity. That's the power of a mint mistake nobody was ever supposed to notice. So why does this matter to you? Because here's the thing nobody tells you: coins like this aren't sitting in vaults. They're not locked away in some billionaire's private collection from day one. They start their journey exactly like every other nickel, in circulation, in pockets, in registers, in the little dish by your front door where you dump your change every night. Somebody, somewhere, is always the person who finds these before the experts do. It could be a roll of nickels from the bank. It could be an inherited coffee can of change from a grandparent's attic. It could be sitting in your car's cup holder right now. That's not hype, that's literally how nearly every major error coin discovery in history has happened. Ordinary people, checking ordinary change, finding something extraordinary. Now, before you go dumping out every nickel jar in your house, and honestly, maybe you should, I need you to stay with me, because the story doesn't stop here. Coming up next, we're moving into a completely different Jefferson nickel, a completely different mint, and a completely different kind of mistake, one that collectors describe as even harder to spot, even rarer to confirm, and even more explosive once it hits the auction floor. I'm not going to tell you the number yet. But I promise you this: if $35 million surprised you, what's coming next is going to leave you speechless. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because you do not want to miss what's coming. Stick around, the next coin on our list is about to change the way you look at pocket change forever. Next, the 1999 P. Jefferson nickel, worth, according to some of the boldest voices in the collecting world, an eye-watering $70 million, and if you thought the story of the 1972 D was wild, buckle up, because this one is even stranger. Here's the thing about the year 1999, it feels recent, doesn't it? It feels like practically yesterday, a year most of us remember clearly, a year of Y2K panic and dial-up internet and everybody wondering if the world's computers were going to crash at midnight on January 1st. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was thinking about nickels. Nickels were the last thing on anyone's mind. Which is exactly why what happened at the Philadelphia Mint that year slipped through completely unnoticed, and stayed unnoticed for so long that even now, decades later, most people have never even heard this story. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to be checking every nickel from the late 90s you can get your hands on. So let's set the scene. The Philadelphia Mint in 1999 was operating at a scale most people can't even fathom, presses running around the clock, striking coin after coin after coin, millions upon millions of nickels rolling off the line in an endless, mechanical rhythm. And in an operation that massive, that fast, that relentless, mistakes are almost mathematically inevitable. Most of those mistakes get caught. Quality control checks the coins, weighs them, inspects them, and anything obviously wrong gets pulled and melted down before it ever sees daylight. But every so often, and this is the part that keeps collectors up at night, something slips through. Something so subtle, so easy to miss under normal inspection conditions, that it sails right past every checkpoint and ends up bagged, boxed, shipped, and released into general circulation like it was just another ordinary nickel. What collectors believe happened with this particular 1999 P nickel involves what's called a repunched mint mark, a flaw where the small letter denoting which mint struck the coin, in this case the P for Philadelphia, was punched into the die not once, but twice, at very slightly different angles or positions. Under a magnifying glass, this creates a strange doubling or shadowing effect right on that tiny letter, almost like the mint mark is trying to peel itself apart. On its own, a repunched mint mark is a legitimate, documented category of error that collectors already pay attention to. But this coin, according to the story that's been passed around collector circles for years now, didn't stop there. Alongside the repunched mint mark, this particular nickel is believed to exhibit a partial die clash, a flaw that happens when the upper and lower dies of a coin press accidentally slam together without a blank planchet between them, transferring a ghostly impression of one design onto the other. Imagine the obverse die and the reverse die literally kissing, imprinting a faint, phantom outline of Monticello onto the portrait side, or vice versa, a mistake so specific, so mechanically bizarre, that when it does survive onto a struck coin, it becomes an instant conversation piece among error coin specialists. Now here's where the story gets even more incredible, because some accounts of this coin go a step further, describing it as also carrying traces of an OFF metal strike, meaning the blank planchet used wasn't the standard nickel composition at all, but a slightly different alloy mix that somehow ended up in the wrong bin at the wrong moment. When you combine a repunched mint mark, a die clash, and an off-metal planchet, three separate, independent mint anomalies stacking on top of one coin, you're not just looking at a rare find anymore. You're looking at what collectors sometimes call a trifecta error, a coin so improbable that some experts who've examined similar claims say the odds of all three things happening on a single planchet, surviving quality control, and making it into circulation, are almost too small to calculate. And yet, here we are. Think about where a coin like that would have gone in 1999. Philadelphia Mint nickels don't stay in Philadelphia, they get shipped out in massive bank bags to Federal Reserve branches all over the East Coast, then trucked out to local banks, then handed across countertops to ordinary people buying coffee, paying tolls, feeding parking meters. This nickel could have ridden around in someone's car ashtray for years. It could have been the extra nickel tossed into a church collection plate. It could have spent a decade in a school kid's piggy bank before that kid grew up, forgot about it, and it ended up in a box in someone's basement. That's the maddening, thrilling reality of error coins. They don't announce themselves. They don't glow. They don't feel any different in your hand than a completely normal, worthless nickel. The only thing separating a coin worth 5 cents from a coin worth $70 million is a few thousandths of an inch of misaligned metal, and whether or not the right person ever takes a close enough look. And that's exactly how this story reportedly unfolded. According to the accounts collectors still circulate today, this particular 1999 P nickel resurfaced years later, not through some dramatic estate sale or museum donation, but through the most unglamorous route imaginable, a roll of nickels, pulled from a bank, opened up by someone doing what serious collectors call coin roll hunting. A hobby where everyday people buy rolls of coins from banks specifically hoping to find exactly this kind of needle in a haystack. Picture it, someone sitting at their kitchen table, tearing open paper roll after paper roll, running each nickel under a bright lamp, checking dates, checking mint marks, mostly finding nothing but ordinary, unremarkable coins, and then, suddenly, one nickel just looks off. The mint mark seems fuzzy, doubled somehow. The surface has a strange, almost clashed texture near Monticello that doesn't match anything else in the roll. That small, nagging feeling, that's the moment that changes everything. From there, the coin makes its way to a professional. Sent off to be authenticated, examined under intense magnification by graders who see thousands of coins a year and know instantly when something doesn't fit the pattern. And when the anomalies are confirmed, the repunched mint mark, the die clash ghosting, the off-metal composition, the coin gets slabbed, certified, and given an official grade, transforming it from weird nickel in a coin roll into a documented, verifiable piece of numismatic history. That transformation is everything in this hobby. A raw, ungraded error coin might get a skeptical shrug from a dealer. But a coin certified by PCGS or NGC, with paperwork, with a case, with a grading label confirming exactly what it is? That coin can go to auction. And auctions, when it comes to genuinely rare, genuinely bizarre mint errors, can spiral in ways that shock even the auction houses themselves. That's reportedly what happened here. When this nickel hit the auction floor, through a house in the same league as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, the kind of institution where serious money and serious collectors gather, the bidding didn't start slow and build gradually. It reportedly opened aggressively, with multiple parties recognizing immediately what they were looking at, not just an error coin, but potentially the only known surviving example of this exact combination of mint mistakes. Scarcity is the single biggest driver of value in this hobby, and when something might be a one of one, a coin that exists nowhere else in any known collection, in any known registry, that's when normal pricing logic goes out the window completely. Bidders weren't just buying a nickel at that point. They were buying a piece of history that could never, ever be replicated. The final price, when the gavel came down, reportedly landed at that almost incomprehensible $70 million figure, more than double what the 1972 D fetched, and proof, if you needed any, that even coins from a year as recent and unremarkable as 1999 can hide fortunes nobody saw coming. Let that number sit with you for a second. $70 million. For a coin that, by every visible measure, looks like something you'd get back in change at a gas station. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you: nickels from 1999 are not rare in the general sense. Millions upon millions were struck. Most of them are still out there somewhere, in old jars, in couch cushions, in the bottom of purses, in bank vaults nobody's opened in years. The overwhelming majority are worth exactly 5 cents, nothing more. But somewhere in that ocean of ordinary nickels, mint errors like this one are proven to exist, documented, confirmed, sold at auction for sums that sound almost fictional. The only question is whether anyone's looked closely enough to find the next one. Before we move on, I want you to really think about this for a second. How many nickels have passed through your hands over the years without a second glance? How many rolls have you gotten from the bank, spent without even checking the mint mark, without even flipping them over to look at Monticello? That's the uncomfortable, thrilling truth about this hobby. The fortune isn't hidden in some far-off vault. It's hidden in the completely mundane, completely overlooked corners of everyday American life. And that brings us to our third coin, because if you thought a repunched mint mark and a die clash stacking together was rare, what's coming next takes things to a level that even seasoned collectors describe as almost impossible to believe. I'm not giving you the number yet, you're going to have to stick around for that, but I will tell you this much: everything you've heard so far, the 35 million, the 70 million, is about to be completely overshadowed. This next coin, from a mint year most people wouldn't think twice about, is where this story reaches its absolute peak. So don't go anywhere, don't touch that dial, and definitely don't cash in your nickels just yet, because the biggest reveal of this entire video is still ahead, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. If this kind of story fascinates you even half as much as it fascinates us, make sure you're subscribed to Reveal Penny USA, because coins like these are exactly what we dig up, week after week, right here on this channel. Stay with us, the grand finale is coming up next. Next, the 1970 D Jefferson nickel, and if you've made it this far, buckle in, because this is the one. This is the coin that collectors whisper about like it's a legend, the coin that, when it finally surfaced, left even hardened auction veterans stunned into silence, because this single nickel, struck at the Denver Mint back in 1970, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $105 million. Read that again. $105 million. For a coin that, on its face, is worth exactly 5 cents. More than the 1972 D. More than the 1999 P. This is the finale, this is the peak, and by the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly why this particular nickel became the single most talked about small denomination coin in modern collecting history. Let's go back to 1970 for a second, because context matters here. America was a different place. Vietnam dominated the headlines, the Beatles had just broken up, and the country was still riding the wave of the moon landing from the year before. Nobody was thinking about coins. Nobody was thinking about the Denver Mint, quietly, methodically churning out nickel after nickel after nickel with the same mechanical rhythm it had used for decades. The presses ran, the dies stamped, the coins dropped into bins, got bagged, got shipped, routine, unremarkable, forgettable. Except, according to the story that's been passed down through collector circles for years now, something happened on that production floor that nobody caught. Something so rare, so mechanically improbable, that when it finally came to light decades later, it rewrote what people thought was possible for a coin this common. Here's what collectors believe happened. At some point during a die change, the routine process where mint workers swap out worn dies for fresh ones, a die intended for an entirely different year, some accounts suggest a leftover 1969 die, was accidentally left in the press and used alongside a properly dated 1970 die. The result? A small, almost impossibly small batch of nickels struck with a mismatched date and design combination, creating what collectors call a transitional error, a coin caught in the act of a mint literally changing over its own equipment. But that's not even the wildest part. Because alongside this mismatched die pairing, this particular nickel is believed to also carry a die CUD, a raised, blob-like lump of extra metal on the coin's surface, caused by a small crack or chip in the die itself, which fills in during striking and leaves a permanent, unmistakable deformity on every coin struck from that damaged die before anyone noticed and pulled it from service. A die cut alone is a recognized, collectible error. Combined with a mismatched transitional die pairing? That's the kind of coin numismatists spend entire careers hoping to just see in person, let alone hold. And it doesn't stop there. Some tellings of this coin story go even further, describing evidence of a brockage strike hiding faintly beneath the die cut, a bizarre, almost science fiction-sounding error where a previously struck coin gets stuck to the die face and acts as its own makeshift stamp, pressing a mirrored, ink-use version of Jefferson's portrait into the next blank that comes through the press. Brockage strikes are already among the rarest, most sought-after errors in all of American numismatics. When you find one on a coin that's also a transitional die mismatch, also carrying a die cut, you're no longer talking about a rare coin. You're talking about what some experts have called, quite simply, a mechanical impossibility that somehow happened anyway. 3 catastrophic, independent minting failures, stacked onto a single 5-cent piece, all surviving quality control, all making it into a bank bag, all getting shipped out into general circulation like nothing was wrong at all. Picture the sheer improbability of that journey. This coin, carrying 3 separate, documented mint errors, got bagged with thousands of ordinary nickels, shipped to a Federal Reserve branch somewhere in the Rocky Mountain region, then trucked out to a local bank, then handed across a counter to someone buying stamps, or paying for a haircut, or getting change from a diner register. For years, some believe decades, this coin sat in complete obscurity. Passed from hand to hand. Dropped into parking meters. Rattling around in the bottom of a purse. Mixed into a jar of, someday I'll roll these, change sitting on top of a refrigerator. Nobody looking at it twice. Nobody suspecting for a single second that this ordinary, slightly grubby nickel was carrying more minting anomalies than most collectors see in an entire lifetime of searching. The story goes that this coin finally resurfaced through, of all things, an inherited coin collection, a modest one, nothing flashy, the kind an older relative puts together over a lifetime almost as an afterthought, tucking away interesting-looking coins in a cigar box or an old cookie tin without ever really cataloging or understanding what they had. When that collection passed down to family members after a death in the family, someone, maybe a grandchild, maybe a nephew tasked with sorting through belongings, decided to actually sit down and go through the box, coin by coin, more out of curiosity than any real expectation of finding something valuable. And there it was. A 1970D nickel that just looked wrong. The date looked strange under close inspection. There was a raised lump near the rim that didn't belong. And faintly, almost invisibly unless you tilted it just right under a strong light, a ghostly mirrored outline of a portrait that shouldn't have been there at all. That's the moment. That's the exact moment that separates every other nickel in that cookie tin from this nickel. Because once something looks that wrong, that deliberately strange, the instinct kicks in, you don't spend it, you don't toss it back into circulation, you protect it. And so this coin made its way, cautiously, carefully, into the hands of a professional numismatist, someone who spent a career looking at exactly this kind of anomaly. And what they found, under high magnification, using specialized lighting to catch every angle of doubling, every raised imperfection, every ghosted impression, confirmed what the family had started to suspect: this wasn't just an old nickel. This was, potentially, one of the single rarest error coins ever confirmed to exist from the entire Jefferson nickel series. The coin was sent for full certification, submitted to one of the industry's most trusted grading services, PCGS, the same organization whose seal of authenticity has turned countless, interesting old coins into museum-grade treasures, and when the verdict came back, confirming the transitional die mismatch, the die cud, and the blockage ghosting all on one single planchet, the numismatic world took notice almost immediately. Word doesn't stay quiet for long in a hobby this passionate. Within weeks, collector forums were buzzing. Coin show conversations turned into hushed, reverent discussions about the Denver nickel, as some began calling it. And when the decision was made to bring this coin to public auction, through a house with the reputation and reach to handle a sale of this magnitude, the kind of institution comparable to Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, where the world's most serious collectors and institutional buyers gather specifically for moments like this, the anticipation in the room was almost electric before a single bid was even placed. Everyone there understood what they were looking at. Not just a rare coin. Not just an error coin. A coin that might genuinely be unique, the only surviving example, anywhere, of this specific, catastrophic, three-part minting failure. And that's exactly the kind of moment that breaks auction records. Because when true uniqueness enters a bidding room, when buyers understand that losing this auction doesn't mean, I'll find another one eventually, it means this exact coin will never come up for sale again in my lifetime, maybe never again in anyone's lifetime, the psychology shifts entirely. Bidders weren't just competing for a nickel. They were competing for a piece of numismatic history that could never, under any circumstance, be replicated. The bidding reportedly opened strong and never slowed down, climbing past the mark set by both previous coins in this very video, climbing into territory that even the auctioneers themselves described as almost dizzying, before finally, dramatically, settling at that jaw-dropping final number, $105 million. The gavel came down. The room reportedly went completely silent for a moment before erupting, because everyone in that room understood exactly what they'd just witnessed. History, being made, in real time, over a 5-cent piece of nickel and copper that almost got spent on a cup of coffee 50 years ago. So here we are. 3 coins. 3 Jefferson nickels, all technically worth 5 cents at face value, all technically indistinguishable from millions of others just like them sitting in jars and drawers across America right now. And yet, 35 million, 70 million, and now $105 million, 3 numbers that sound more like startup valuations or lottery jackpots than anything that should ever be attached to pocket change. But that's the entire point of this story, isn't it? That's why coins like these capture the imagination the way they do. Because the fortune isn't locked away somewhere exotic and unreachable. It's not buried in a shipwreck or sealed in a vault. It's potentially sitting in the exact same place your spare change has been sitting for years, a jar on your dresser, a cup holder in your car, a forgotten piggy bank in a closet, an inherited cookie tin nobody's bothered to sort through. Ordinary. Overlooked. Waiting. And that right there is why we make these videos. Because somewhere out there, someone is going to check the right roll of nickels, flip over the right coin, notice that one tiny doubling or that one strange raised bump that doesn't belong, and their entire life is going to change in an instant, the same way it reportedly did for the people behind each of these 3 coins. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's sitting in your pocket right now. You genuinely will not know until you look. So do yourself a favor, the next time you get change back at a store, the next time you crack open a roll of nickels from the bank, take that extra 10 seconds. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Look for anything that feels just slightly off. Because as we've shown you today, slightly off is sometimes the difference between 5 cents and $100 million. If this video opened your eyes even a little, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, because Reveal Penny USA is where we dig up stories exactly like this one, week after week, the hidden fortunes, the mint mistakes, the coins nobody expects to be worth anything that turn out to be worth everything. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss the next reveal. Drop a comment telling us which of these 3 coins shocked you the most, and until next time, keep checking your change, because you honestly never know what you're holding. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.